Hello and welcome to Diana's Makerspace. Today I'm doing a podcast from Barnes & Noble in Racine. Part of the reason is because I wanted to demonstrate an interesting concept in regard to artificial intelligence and effect on the job market. Um, in the news lately, there's been a lot of things about people being laid off due to artificial intelligence and massive use of artificial intelligence to replace people. Well, part of the reason why I'm doing this today from Barnes & Noble is right next to Barnes & Noble is Pick and Save. And like many of us who live on a fixed income, sometimes you run into hiccups in your budget that you don't have enough to pay all your bills at once. So I'm doing what many people do is basically going over to Pick and Save, making a partial payment on the We Energies bill while I'm waiting for energy assistance to come through, but making a partial payment. And then basically, depending on the budget, near the end of the month, I'll make another partial payment. How does this relate to AI? Well, for many people working in AI that in the tech field or corporate tech field that have been recently laid off, you may think it's the end of the world. You may be in your early 30s, late 20s, and think it's the end of the world. I lost a tech job. When I go for another tech job, it may take another 9 months for me to find a job. So I'll say, well, if you're so good, how come they go to a recommendation but they still let you go? Well, there's one simple answer. And the reason why basically they let you go is basically because they really didn't value you as a person. They valued as a cog, as a machine, as a tool, as a quant. Sometimes in finance and other things, when you work with numbers, you're referred to as a quant, or in the med tech field, you're referred to as a medical robot. Take blood pressure, do work phlebotomy, and that. And it's always the case. Well, and if you start to complain, they say, "Well, do you like your job?" We have other people who can take it. That's when you realize you're not being valued as a person. So. To those in the 20s and 30s don't panic. You'll survive it. You're actually going to go stronger. You're going to have a much better career, and you're going to have a much better life. But the thing is, you realize now that basically over specialization doesn't work. You can do your best. You can study the best to be the best Android program, the best JSON data file designer, best Python designer. Over specialization doesn't work. You got to have different skills. For example, like many people do gig work. Like when I went in a situation, I had it occur in my late 30s. So what I did was, I went into retail. I worked part time in retail at Roundy's, and while running my own business when there's a dip. And also at the place I worked to, that's also in Barnes & Noble, open next door. So basically, that was my thing. And the thing is, what happens? So you will survive, but the hardest thing is basically the first 3 months, because what happens? You're used to a certain lifestyle, like you want to do this, you want to do that. You have a lot of streaming, maybe you have a lot of shopping or something else. Or most important thing is the car payment. What are you going to do? Excuse me. Well, with me, basically, luckily my dad was my financial planner, and he's very good at it. I actually learned more of his techniques when I was older, in my late 30s, because my dad wanted me to focus on being an executive, because at that time, even though I had a little hiccup when I was 29, 1 month later, I was called by one computer society in California, and they said, well, you did such great medical research. I think, what do you think about working for the military again as a civilian contractor and a computer executive in aerospace? Great. So at age 30, I became the youngest executive in aerospace, working for a Society for Computer Simulation. Also, many people who I worked with included the president of the Boeing Company, Lockheed Martin, McDonnell Douglas, Ford Aerospace, GM Aerospace, Chrysler Aerospace. Even EU aerospace companies and medical companies as well. In addition, but what happens? That still didn't give me enough to overcome all the bills that I had from basically being used to being pampered as a quant. So what did I do? Well, first thing what my dad did is my dad realized that I had that I had extra equity in the house. So what we did was basically I was paying off my first Lincoln. So what I did was I went to the bank, and I asked them if we could do a home equity loan. At that time, I didn't have enough to qualify for home equity, so I said, okay, can we do a mortgage? Since my house was basically had a lot of equity, so we did a mortgage. We added the Lincoln to the mortgage, so the Lincoln was included as part of the mortgage. That meant that I didn't have to worry about a car payment, but also the mortgage payment was lower than my car payment. And since also we ran a family business of 4 apartments, there's enough basically even to pay for the mortgage when I was still looking for a job, and also working as an executive on the West Coast, because the way I worked as executive on the West Coast is payment in kind, because basically due to issues with my work contract at that time, I was still in a case where my former employer could dictate who I could work with, and if I did work with them, I'd have to pay over half my salary to my former employer. So what they did in California, they worked out a way that I didn't have to do that, and that I would receive my payment and benefits much later in life, which I'm receiving now. But the thing is, what happens, so you got to have someone that knows how to do this, either your parents, your aunt or uncle, or even older friends like that, though, and stuff that know and that you can trust to do this. The biggest thing is work out your car payment. Find a way to make it so that basically your car payment is lowered and it's rolled into something else, so you don't have to worry about if you miss the first month of the car payment, you're going to see the repo tow truck come out and take your car. Get that taken care of. Second thing is to do what Susie Orman said. Pay all the bills that keep a roof over your head. So if you're renting an apartment, find a way to pay to rent an apartment. And also, if you see something like that's not in your field, do like I did, work in retail part-time. And when they asked me about when I went to apply to work in retail, they said, well, are you really applying for a career in retail? I was honest. I said, no. I said, really? I said, I'm running into financial difficulties, but I need to make extra income. So I really just wish to be able to have a job so I can make extra income. So, well, what about if we have promotions and we want to promote people? Are you going to be mad if you're not promoted? I said, no, go ahead. You promote people. Pass me over, because I really just need the job to make extra income, and use the job as a lifeboat. And what happened to 2 people I worked with were acceptable in doing that, and even when my dad died, they helped out greatly. They made it easier for my mother and me. But the thing is, people will work with you like that, but you got to be honest, and also you got to tell them, well, look, I need the job to make extra income, and they'll understand that, because everyone's been there. Everyone, no matter what you see in the movies or on streaming or something else, not everything is perfect. Not everything is a rose garden. So, and also in my career, let's see, I've had how many jobs? Let's see. Manager, landlord, medical research, society, business. I've had 8 jobs in my career, and basically, 2 of the jobs have been starting my own businesses. One is a book publishing company, and one is a computer consultant, military contracting company, which are both still in business. Although I'm retired, I work at it semi-retired. And other businesses have been the private sector, retail, medical research, civilian medical research, military medical research during the first Gulf War. The thing is, it's like everyone will tell you, like, if you over specialize, you're going to get the high pay and everything else and other stuff. And like even yesterday, I was listening to one podcast by Silicon Valley Girl, and she was mentioned talking with one person at an AI company, and the person said, well, why are companies going to AI for junior programmers, not hiring junior programmers? And he said, well, simply this. He says, well, a junior programmer from college is going to want $65,000 to start when they graduate from college. Most companies can go to Claude or other AIs to write junior programming code for $10 a month, $100 a month. And it goes back to what my dad said. They price themselves out of the business, and that's the other thing. Is also you always have to watch your price points. Don't price yourself. Sometimes it's better to be underpaid because that means that you'll be kept. But also, when you're underpaid, make sure that it's not you're not being underpaid because you're not qualified. You're being underpaid because you're trying to give them a benefit and stability, long-term stability. So, for many people who experience this thing, it's awakening. I mean, and when you turn 30, it is an awakening, because for me it was too. Because in my 20s, most of the time in my 20s, so basically, I started research when I was 27, and prior to that, I did private tutoring with special needs students as one of my side businesses. Very successful. I tutored 4 students. All 4 of them were able to graduate and obtain engineering degrees as well as biological degrees from UW Parkside. And currently now I'm tutoring a student who has special needs as well. She's planning to go for a degree in the social service arena, like that though. But even then, I realized, you have to be multifaceted. That's why, in college, when people ask me what my college degree is, I have to explain to them it's rather lengthy, because it's actually a Bachelor of Science in Pre-Med, Bachelor of Science in Biomedical Engineering and Computer Science, minor in Art and History. So when I graduated with 190 credits, which is equivalent to a master's degree, and so I was awarded a special advanced bachelor degree. And even when I graduated that, I did 3 theses as well, one in pre-med, one in artificial intelligence, and one in computer science as an undergrad. And I had my first paper published just before receiving my first honorary PhD in '92 for artificial intelligence and cognition. For a breakthrough showing that you can do advanced artificial intelligence. And I actually demonstrated on an Osborne 1 computer, which had 4K of memory. Now remember, 4K, 64K of memory, so 64,000 bytes of memory, not 64 gigabytes of memory. So if we were to do the math here, 1/1,000,000th the memory size of today's computer, and the processor speed was 4 megahertz compared to 4 gigahertz, which is 1/1000th the processor speed. And people may wonder, well, how could you get all this done? Well, what happens? This is an example of why I say, like, if you've worked at a tech company and been let go because of an AI, don't panic, because this was done because basically of using what's called actual biological intelligence, your cognition. And with cognition, you can use something that some people consider slow or obsolete to achieve great things, and even with yourself in that though. But the way you have to do it though, you have to be multifaceted. A lot of times you hear about thinking outside the box. That's great, but the box is not always what it's cut out to be, because the box is a 3-dimensional thing. Has this. Well, the world is bigger than the box, and you got to think bigger than the box. And something else though too is, again, like I said in the beginning, don't panic. You're starting a new life, you're starting a new career. It's going to be scary at first, but what happens is once you get through what in the military they call the shock and awe, you'll find out that basically you're actually on a better path, because now you're setting your own direction, you're setting your own life, and also you're setting a firmer foundation for yourself. And what do you have to do that? Become multifaceted. Just don't focus on one thing. Focus on other things. Like for example, I read 2600. I do Arduino. Also, even during my work as a tech executive, I did fashion. Like for example, I have a Barbie collection. I make doll houses, doll clothes, furniture, and online doll club, and and even fashion for myself and my friends. Because a friend of mine has asked me to make a sand skirt and a knit skirt, which I'm going to do soon. I just have to stop over at Michael's to get some material. And also I was raised by parents that were very progressive, because both my mother and father cooked, and my mother and father knew how to sew. So my grandmother and my mother taught me how to sew when I was 7 years old. We had an old singer, and they taught me how to do different things and also how to hand sew. And my dad knew how to, same thing. And a friend of mine, which was interesting, which I give him really credit for, because he was raised in Lake Forest, and at that time in Lake Forest, the school had the boys take home ec as well as the girls. Now, being raised in Kenosha at that time, I could have taken home ec before I transitioned, but the problem was due to toxic masculinity that existed in the Milwaukee area. You would have been beaten up if you were a boy taking home ec at that time, and a few times I was attacked by gang members. So, but I'm glad it's more open now. But learn to do different things. Learn how to sew. But the one issue I really have a question with is because there's one noted AI researcher who I worked with during my career, and what happened was most of the time he's a nice guy, but sometimes when things get desperate, like most researchers, they sort of play people to try to get stuff, and I was played, and I won't go into details of it, but he makes the comment, well, because of AI, everyone should become plumbers. Well, really, I wish he would read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, because even Douglas Adams in 1979 talked about when British economists used to say, well, when the British economy was going downhill, and they said, well, everyone should become shoe salesmen and let's say shoe salesman. So what happened was that then he wrote a chapter about this, about planet where everyone over specialized, everyone became the best at shoe salesmen or working with shoes and everything else. But then, just exactly like the Great Tulip Panic, boom, it fell. But in this case, the whole planet fell, not just one country. The whole planet fell. So everyone who survived on the planet evolved into birds and flew around and hated anyone who wore shoes. And this is the problem with the AI, because I still wonder if AI is a boom, because I've been through two AI booms, in the 70s, the 80s, and also the resurgence of the 80s boom in the 90s. And the one problem that exists with different things, when you have things done by AI, you have things done by app. Like, for example, in the maker community. Let me just show this here. Okay. Recently, one company bought out Arduino, and what happened was the company has a good reputation for many things, but when they came with the new software contract, a few people in different postings posted about, well, any code that you develop in the software contract, we have an indefinite and irrevocable license to your code, so they can use your code at any time without any payment or any type of attribution. But however, when you use their product, you have a limited license and a limited use to use your code. Even to sell your own code, and many people say, well, wait, this is completely different from what Arduino did. This is completely different from open source. This is completely from the common, what's it called? I'll call it the common license. Others, if you could fill in the full name like that, they'll share and share alike license. So what happens, or what you run into, is basically people start to say, well, wait a minute. So they get all the benefits here, and we get nothing. It's like even on the 10 Commandments, like that, like with the scale, when children Hester and pray Moses demonstrate on the scale, and the Pharaoh said, well, we need the slaves to make this, and this. He put this on one scale, scale's going up, and then Moses came and said, well, if you don't give them enough food and rest, and he put on a brick, and he said, the dead make nothing. And also people being abused make nothing too. So it's more than just basically business. It also goes into morals and ethics of society. So how do you survive? So transitioning from being thought of as an AI cog, a cog in a machine, that you're replaceable by an AI. First thing, remember you're human. Basically, you have rights, and also the thing is, figure a way how to make your budget. Yes, you're not going to have everything to pay everything, and that's part of the reason why people have financial planners and financial advisors, because paying a financial advisor is not someone who just pays the bills. It's very easy for someone to call themselves a financial advisor when all the money's in and say, well, okay, I'll just mail your payments in for you. There you go, this, or go online, make it. The real thing of a financial advisor is what happens when the payments aren't there, when the phone money isn't there. Can they talk with your creditors? Can they make payment agreements? And that's the thing about how our family business was always run. My grandfather, when he ran Ryan Schultz and Dahl, there's a low construction business in Wisconsin, Illinois, in business for over 90 years. We made most of the major highways in this area, even going to Maston, the Beltline, and also up to Fort McCoy and Badger Armory. Yet my grandfather knew, basically, as my mother told me, he was a great civil engineer. He could build anything. He knew how to build roads, and he made the best roads and everything else. And he treated his workers so well, and people working for him so well, they never wanted to form a union. However, he realized that he wasn't the best financial planner. He wasn't a financial analyst. So what did he do? He found there's one person worked for him as an accountant who was a financial analyst, and what he told him was, he said, well, look, the way I'd like you to do is this. Each month I'll have all the money's coming in, and I'll have you have access to it. But each month I want you to take a certain amount to pay me and my workers a monthly paycheck, and then just keep it steady. But then basically, if there's a dip, and he says, yes, I know, right, I'll be able to work with the contractors and the suppliers and everything to work out payment arrangements and everything. So basically, you guys just concentrate on building, and I'll concentrate on keeping the cash flow going and the supplies coming. Now that's what you have to do, basically, even if you're just an individual. But for those who work in the tech field, you learn this more, because basically the tech field can really be pampered. And then when you're not pampered, it's like, oh, how the mighty have fallen. And also sometimes it's not empathy, because some of the people I'll say, well, you let go because you weren't good enough. You weren't this and this. It's almost as bad as being in high school again. God, and so what do? Well, first thing you do is, it's like there's a movie called Office Space with Melody Griffin, and she had this Rolodex of friends on the card. But there was something bad happened, she called them. And the first thing she did is, I remember my dad and mom were watching this with me, and said, so watch what she's going to do next. She took this Rolodex, she called when a friend couldn't help it, that Rolodex card went in the trash. She called another friend, they couldn't help it, that went in the trash. Another one there. Finally, the only thing that was left on the Rolodex were just a few cards, maybe about 5 cards of people that she could actually depend upon. And then what happened was she started to form the life built. And at one point, basically, when she finally did get going, there came a second test. The person that actually demoted her down to the secretary post said, well, this person did it because they thought that you didn't have the temperament or anything else to do this if you ever had the rug pulled out. And he said, and then it came out, and my parents said, watch, listen to the next question coming. And remember, they never saw this movie. This is the first time we saw it, but they've been through it. And and the second question is, okay, you did this once. Are you willing to do this on a daily basis? For the rest of your career, overcome these obstacles? And she said yes. And then the movie ended with her in the executive office and also starting her own business. And that's how you get it. Through failure, through adversity, you do get success, but you gotta have the temperament to know not to panic, don't give in. Work on your budget. Talk with people you owe bills to. Say, well, look, and say, look, I can make a partial payment here, and then depending on what happens in the next month, 2 weeks later, I can make another payment. They'll work with you, but you got to be honest. And also, what happens is the other thing too is when you talk with people, you got to show them that basically certain types of pampered things that you got used to because you were being pampered, you dropped. You actually became more focused and more responsible in what you're going to do. It's not, the first few months are not easy, and luckily I had my parents, and my dad was a retired executive who helped me through this, and also I had a lieutenant general who I worked with to help me through this because as he understood, he said, well, because he said, well, actually you're more of a farm boy who lives in the city, and he says, I understand it, and it's the same with me. He said, basically, I'm a ranch boy raised in Texas, and after Vietnam, my parents wanted me to stay on the ranch, and after the first Gulf War, your parents want you to stay on the farm. And they said, but you guys, there's a greater deed in society that still needs to be done, and you're still willing to help out. So what happened was he was sort of like a big brother and a helping hand, as well as many other big brothers and sisters who I met in the Air Force who were a helping hand at that time. The thing is, don't panic. Talk with people about your bills, and also what happens. Sometimes you're going to run into people that are going to try to squeeze you. They're going to try to say, well, you know, if you don't do this, I'm going to do this and this and this and this. Okay. If you talk with people and they're going to try to squeeze you and get aggressive with you, get legal. And then, well, first question is going, well, how am I going to afford the retainer? How can I do this? How can I do this? Well, I have Legal Shield. I pay $29 a month. Used to be $19 a month. And also, I am an associate with Legal Shield, but I haven't been able to do much lately with the associate thing. However, Legal Shield is legal expense insurance, and you'll hear a lot of attorneys say, well, oh, that's a waste of money. It's not. Actually, it does help because you can actually talk with the attorney. You can have the attorney write a letter for you. You can also have an attorney call and talk with the creditors, talk with the landlord if need be about what to do. And that can prevent you from being scared or being pushed to make a decision that you don't have to make. The main thing, though, is with Legal Shield is you can't do anything stupid. You can't say, well, just because I have Legal Shield, I can do this. I can be just as callous and non-empathetic as the people who are against me. No, it doesn't work that way. You'll get yourself into a big hole. Don't do that. Never repeat the bad habits that someone has done to you, because what happens, they'll use this as an excuse to say, see, we had a right to do this, and see, this person did the same thing when the Air Force. Always work on a higher level. Like my parents used to say, don't go down to their level, don't go down to their level, don't go down to their level. So, regarding AI, you'll survive, but you got to become multifaceted. Like many people who lost tech jobs. There are many YouTube videos where there are many people who worked in the tech industry and tech executives. They went back to a hobby of theirs. They do sewing, like I do. Sewing, making Barbie clothes, making doll houses. Even they make fashions or other stuff. And they also teach sewing classes on YouTube or teach classes. And what happens is that's allowed them a greater freedom than what they had when they were in the tech field. I mean, I'll try compiling a list on here. Just give me time, because sometimes some days I feel good, like today I'm feeling good, but some days I don't, and sometimes it takes me longer. That's why I'm retired by disability, because I can't really do a standard job. And also I have health issues. Without the insurance I have, my health insurance expenses would cost $65,000 a year to keep me in the condition that I am, for different medications, treatments, and specialists. So the thing is, watch a few YouTube videos, learn through YouTube University. But the main thing is also, the other thing is, you may have been in an environment where everyone's selling and no one's buying. Don't make a video that you're automatically asking someone to sell, because like I was watching another video as well like that though. I'll remember it or post it. But what she's saying the selling pyramid is actually an inverted pyramid like this. When you get a lot of people watching your video, watching your post, she describes how these are the people that are interested, but they haven't made a decision to sell. So what happens, if you put a direct sell link on there, you're going to turn them off and they're all going to flee. In the middle section right here, these are people that like what you put out there, and they think, well, okay, that's great. Well, what happens, again, you don't put a sell link on there because, again, they're going to flee. What you do is you put information like what type of services you've done, what type of projects have you done. Then when they feel confident, they'll go down to here. This is the small group that buys. And these are normally like 5 people or 10 people are watching your video link. Then you put a buy link or referral link or phone number and then you get on the phone and say, oh, hi, yeah, I can help you with this project. Where would you like to meet? Okay, Barnes & Noble, great. Let's what about tomorrow, 4 o'clock? Okay, I'll see you then. And that's how you do it. But the thing is, start simple. You can start with your own camera. You can go to the dollar store, buy a mini tripod, which is what I'm using here, a mini tripod I bought at the dollar store for the cam, or my phone camera. Even though now I have a Nikon and I have a full podcasting studio in my apartment, but I just wanted to demonstrate. And just pick an isolated area, speak softly, because you don't want to broadcast to the whole cafe. Just speak softly and take it step by step, and make sure you have an internet plan that you can afford. What happens is if you can only afford 30 gigabit, $30 a month internet with like I forgot what this medium speed internet, then get that. But if you want to get gigabit internet, it's $100 a month. Get it if you can only afford it, because you can still do podcasting even with the basic internet. But the main thing is get it with the service that doesn't have caps. Like I have mine through Spectrum, and it doesn't have caps. The other thing to do is when you make podcasts, most importantly, put your phone on Do Not Disturb. This phone's been on Do Not Disturb for 2 hours. So basically when I'm making, because if you get a phone call, they'll stop your video recording, and then you have to record where you left off. So put your phone on Do Not Disturb. The third thing, many internet companies will allow you to have an internet phone. Well, use that internet phone as your business phone, and then that way you can still keep your cell phone as your private phone, and just use it. And third, companies like Squarespace will allow you to set up a website, do point of sale processing, and also PayPal will allow you to do that. You can do it that way, so that way people can pay you by credit card. They always don't have to pay you by cash. The main thing is what happens is, like I said before, don't panic. You'll survive this. But make a list of your budget and drop the pamphlet things that you bought that you really don't need, and that you did because you wanted to show power and influence because you're in a pampered job. Just drop those. You don't need to prove to others who you are. You prove to others who you are by sustaining yourself, by growing, and by showing that even though someone's pulled the rug out from underneath you, you can still go, you still survive, and you're doing it without having to be you're treated as a human being. You're not treated as a cog. You're not treated as a machine. You're not treated as a tool. So, to those in your 20s and 30s, don't worry, you'll survive. Even in the internet that exists today, and with AI that exists today, because remember, one limitation of AI still comes down to the Lady Lovelace argument of when George Babbage and Lady Lovelace developed the first computer. A computer can only do what it's programmed to do. A computer can only do what it's taught to do. And that's why many progressive AI companies are realizing now that there's more to intelligence than just feeding it massive amounts of training data. That's why many companies have philosophers to teach the computer about ethics and empathy and other things. But it's still the Lady Lovelace argument. And remember, though, you are a human being. You are much better, and also become multifaceted. Like if you like fashion, try to use your skills in fashion. Try to learn sewing or do other things. But the worst thing to do, in closing, as many people say, well, computing is my hobby too. On the weekends, I'm on the computer, well, what many of us found out is when you live that way, it's like, oh, you really haven't left work. What happens? You're working on you still work on the computer even though you're playing computer games, but basically, and the reason why the company doesn't say that you haven't left work is because you're actually paying for training that they should pay you for. And because you become over specialized, then basically you become a quant. They own you, they control you. Pick a hobby that's not related to computers. Like, for example, my hobby is basically sewing, Barbies, and art. And also because I have my art is based upon, I like using acrylics, and I do a lot of miniature paintings, 12 by 12, 14 by 14. I do some big canvas paintings, but my main reputation is being a miniaturist. And I've had some of my artwork shown in Toronto, and that's something I did very early on in my career, because even though I went into pre-med and I went into tech, computers were partially a hobby, but I realized that basically the real hobby was basically my art, fashion design, and golfing. Other things other than computers. So basically, not to get too involved. And one last example: when my two dogs were alive, if I would work on the computer for too long, like many times you see these YouTube videos where someone's cat will come in and sort of nudge them a little bit and to take a break. That's what my two dogs would do. They look, and even like one of my dogs, Blackie, if I worked on computer and go whoa, 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 and Chip would join in as like, it's time for you to take a break on the computer. And then what Blackie would do sometimes to make sure I wouldn't sneak back, he'd sit on my chair so I wouldn't use the computer and that for a while, saying, well, you need to take a longer break. So pets are very good. They're very in tune with you and other things. So just you realize now that basically you were treated as a cog, you were treated as a tool. Now you're back in the human race. Be glad you're human, and you will survive this. And also, when you do assert your human rights, you will have a better life and a better lifestyle, and you won't be used and you won't be abused again. So just remember, but the last thing, don't go begging on your knees. That's the worst thing to do, because they'll abuse you even more. Like Shania Twain's song, "Blue Eyes, Blue Tears." No, that her song's very inspirational to women who have been abused, and if you want to realize how not to be abused again, listen to her song. Well, this concludes Diana's Makerspace for December 15th, 2025. I'd like to hear what your thoughts are. The best way to reach me is through this channel, X, Facebook, Blue Sky, Pinterest. Please give me time to respond, because some days I do feel well, some days I don't. Today I'm feeling better to get out a little bit. So just give me time. If I don't respond, it's not because I don't want to respond. It's just sometimes I have my up and down days. Well, thank you again for listening, and I'll talk with you at another time.